I've decided to start a new life without you. The words cut through the beautiful wedding music at the country club where we were celebrating my son Marcus's marriage to his college sweetheart, Sarah. Robert, my husband of 32 years, stood near the cake table with his wine glass shaking in his hand. He had waited until the father-son dance was over to drop this bomb on me. The wedding guests stopped dancing. The band kept playing, but nobody was listening anymore. 200 people stared at us, waiting to see what would happen next. They expected me to cry or get angry. Instead, I smiled calmly. "Congratulations on your honesty," I said in a clear voice that everyone could hear. "I'll tell you everything. First, let me thank you for watching Grandma Stories. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video." Today's special shout out goes to Restina Harris, from Birmingham, Alabama. Thank you for being part of our family. Now, let me tell you everything. My name is Margaret Thompson. I am 58 years old, and for 3 decades I had been the perfect wife and mother. I gave up my dream of becoming a teacher to help Robert build his construction company. I raised our wonderful son Marcus while Robert traveled for work, missing soccer games and school plays. Marcus was now 25, wearing his father's smile in his wedding tuxedo, but his eyes showed confusion and hurt. Across the dance floor, I could see Robert's girlfriend, Jessica Martinez, sitting at a table with my book club friends. The same friends who had been acting strange for months. Now I understood why. Jessica was our family accountant, someone I had trusted with our tax papers and business records. She was 15 years younger than me, with dark hair and a nervous smile. She kept looking at her phone, probably wishing she could disappear. I reached into my small wedding purse and pulled out a white envelope with gold edges. I walked over and placed it next to Robert's champagne glass. "What is this?" Robert asked, his confident look starting to fade away. "Something you should read when you get home," I answered, keeping my voice gentle but strong. I turned to Marcus, who looked like he might be sick. His new wife Sarah was holding his arm, trying to comfort him. "I am so proud of you both," I told them, giving Marcus a warm hug. "This is still your special day. Nothing changes that." Then I faced all the wedding guests who were watching us. "Please continue enjoying this beautiful celebration. I wish you all a wonderful evening." I walked toward the exit, my high heels clicking on the marble floor. Every single person watched me go, but I kept my back straight and my head high. The heavy glass doors closed behind me, blocking out the whispered conversations that had started. Outside, the cool October air felt refreshing after being in that stuffy ballroom. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. Behind me, I heard the doors swing open and Robert's voice calling my name. But he no longer sounded sure of himself. He sounded scared. "Margaret, what have you done? What's in that envelope?" I kept walking to my car, allowing myself a small smile. The envelope contained the first part of my plan, something I had been working on secretly for 6 months. I had always been the organized one in our marriage. While Robert focused on building houses and making money, I took care of everything else. I managed our family budget when his business had slow periods. I worked part-time at the library to help pay for Marcus's college when Robert's company almost went bankrupt 5 years ago. My dream of opening a children's tutoring center was always pushed aside for Robert's needs. 8 months ago, I noticed Robert was acting differently. He started working late every night, even on weekends. He bought new clothes and cologne. He was always texting someone and hiding his phone when I walked into the room. When I tried to talk to him about it, he said he was just stressed about work. Then I found the credit card bills he had been hiding from me. Expensive dinners at restaurants we never went to together. Hotel rooms in the city where he claimed to be meeting clients. Jewelry purchases that I never received. I could have confronted him right away, but something told me to wait and learn more. Maybe it was woman's intuition, or maybe it was the hurt I felt growing in my heart. So I started paying attention to everything. I followed him one evening when he said he had a late meeting. Instead, he met Jessica at a fancy restaurant downtown. They held hands across the table and looked at each other the way Robert and I used to when we were young. That's when I knew for sure what was happening. The worst part was discovering how long they had been planning together. I found emails on our shared computer where they talked about their future. Messages about the house they wanted to buy together on the lake. Plans for trips to Europe that Robert had never wanted to take with me. They were going to wait until after Marcus's wedding to tell me, so they wouldn't ruin the celebration. What Robert didn't know was that I had been reading those emails for months, learning about every detail of their secret relationship. What Robert had forgotten was that I used to work at a law office before we got married. I understood legal documents and how to protect myself. I also remembered the business partnership agreement we had signed when his construction company started making real money. The agreement that said if either partner broke their promises, they would lose their share of the company. Robert had insisted on that rule to protect us from dishonest business partners. He never thought it would apply to him breaking his marriage promises. While Robert and Jessica were making their secret plans, I was making my own preparations. I met with lawyers and learned about my rights. I collected copies of all the hidden credit card bills and printed out their emails. I had divorce papers prepared and ready to file. I planned everything perfectly, knowing Robert would want to wait until after Marcus's wedding to avoid causing problems. What he didn't expect was that I would be ready for him when he finally told me his decision. I didn't go back to the wedding reception. Instead, I drove to our house, a beautiful 2-story home in the suburbs that we had built together 15 years ago. The same house that Robert had already promised to Jessica, according to the emails I had read. I parked in our driveway and walked into what had been our home for so many years. Everything looked the same as when we left for the wedding that morning. The family photos on the walls, the couch where we used to watch movies together, the kitchen table where we had shared thousands of meals. I went upstairs to our bedroom and looked in Robert's closet. Sure enough, there were 2 suitcases packed and hidden behind his work clothes. He had been planning to leave tomorrow morning, right after telling me at the wedding. I shook my head at how predictable he was. Robert always liked to have everything planned out, but he wasn't very good at hiding his preparations. My phone kept buzzing with messages from people at the wedding. Friends wanting to know what happened, Marcus asking if I was okay, even Robert's mother calling to find out what was going on. I only answered my son's messages. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Don't let this ruin your special day with Sarah. We'll talk tomorrow when you get back from your honeymoon. I love you both." I had kept this secret from Marcus for months because I didn't want to spoil his engagement and wedding planning. He would probably be upset that I didn't tell him what was happening, but I knew he would understand eventually. Marcus had gotten his father's good looks but my practical thinking, which made him successful in his engineering job. 3 hours later, I heard Robert's truck pull into the driveway. The front door opened hard and fast. "Margaret," he yelled, his voice echoing through our house. "Where are you? We need to talk about this." I was sitting in our living room, calmly looking through photo albums from Marcus's childhood. I closed the album as Robert rushed in. His face red with anger and confusion. The white envelope was crumpled in his fist like he had been squeezing it tight. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, waving the papers at me. "You filed divorce papers today. On our son's wedding day." "I thought the timing was perfect," I replied calmly. "You wanted to start your new life today. I'm just helping you do it the right way. You had no right to do this without talking to me first," he said, trying to sound angry. "I had every right," I answered. "Just like you had the right to choose Jessica over me. We all make our own choices, Robert. The business partnership doesn't apply to marriage," he said, suddenly sounding less sure of himself. "Any lawyer will tell you that." I smiled gently at him. "Actually, it does. Section 15 says the partnership ends if either partner breaks their promises in any part of their life that affects the business." The color drained from Robert's face as he realized what this meant. The same agreement he had created to protect his business would now cost him half of everything he had worked for. His construction company, our savings account, even his truck were all part of the partnership. His grand announcement at Marcus's wedding had just become the most expensive speech of his life. "You can't take everything from me," Robert said, falling into his favorite chair. "I didn't take anything," I replied. "You gave it up when you chose to break your promises to our family." Robert's phone started ringing in his pocket. He looked at it and frowned, then ignored the call. It was probably Jessica, wondering where he was and why he wasn't following their plan to move in together tonight. "You've always been smart, Margaret, but this feels mean," he said, trying a different approach. "What about all our good years together? Doesn't 32 years mean anything to you?" I looked at this man I had loved for most of my adult life. The man who had held me when my father died. The man who had cried with joy when Marcus took his first steps. "Our years together meant everything to me," I said honestly. "That's why it hurt so much when you threw them away." His expression softened for a moment, maybe thinking he could change my mind. "Then maybe we can fix this somehow. People make mistakes. Everyone deserves a second chance." "This wasn't a mistake, Robert," I said firmly. "You planned this for months. You lied to me every single day. You spent our money on another woman. You were going to embarrass me in front of our friends and family." His face got hard again when he realized I knew everything. "How do you know all this?" he asked suspiciously. I picked up my phone and played a recording I had made. It was Robert's voice talking to Jessica on the phone last week. "After the wedding, I'll tell Margaret it's over. Doing it at the reception is perfect because she won't make a scene in front of everyone." Then Jessica's voice. "And she doesn't know about the money we've been saving?" Robert again. "Nothing. Margaret trusts me completely. She never questions anything I do." Robert's eyes went wide with shock. "You recorded my phone calls. That's not legal." "It's perfectly legal when it's in my own house and I'm part of the conversation," I explained. "I didn't record your private moments with Jessica. I'm not cruel like that. Just the conversations about your plans to lie to me and take our money." Robert stood up quickly, looking panicked. "I need to make some phone calls. I'm going to stay at my brother's house tonight." "Tom's house?" I said, raising my eyebrows. He nodded. "My brother's place." "He's not happy with you either," I told him. "Tom was the one who saw you and Jessica together at the mall last month. He didn't tell me right away because he hoped you would end it yourself. When you didn't, he came to talk to me about it." This was another surprise Robert hadn't expected. Tom and I had always gotten along well, but Robert never imagined his own brother would choose my side in this situation. "Everyone's turning against me," he muttered under his breath. "Interesting how that works," I said. I picked up my overnight bag that I had packed earlier. "You have until tomorrow night to get your things out of the house. After that, I'm changing the locks." As I walked toward the door, Robert called after me, desperation clear in his voice. "What about Marcus? Have you thought about how this will affect our son?" I stopped walking and turned around, finally letting some anger show on my face. "Don't you dare use our son to make yourself feel better, Robert. You certainly weren't thinking about Marcus when you were planning your secret life with Jessica." His phone rang again. This time he answered it, and I could hear Jessica's voice on the other end, sounding worried and confused. "Is there a problem?" asked sweetly. Robert covered the phone with his hand. "Jessica is at the apartment we rented. She moved all her stuff in today like we planned." I couldn't help but smile. "The apartment you put both your names on? The lease you signed last month?" Robert nodded, looking confused about why I was asking. "You might want to call the rental office. That application was rejected because of credit problems. They called our house phone to tell us. I took the message myself." I walked out the door, leaving Robert to face the first of many unpleasant surprises. Tom lived in a cozy house across town, near the elementary school where his wife Linda taught kindergarten. When I arrived, Linda greeted me with a big hug and a cup of hot tea. "I just talked to Marcus," she said, leading me to their kitchen. "He's worried about you, but he understands why you did what you did." I never wanted Robert to make such a public announcement, Linda continued, shaking her head. At the wedding, in front of everyone. It was so cruel. He wanted to hurt me, I explained. A public rejection where I couldn't fight back without looking crazy. Linda's face showed how angry she was with her brother-in-law. Robert always did like being dramatic, but this is worse than anything I expected from him. We sat at their kitchen table, surrounded by Linda's collection of ceramic roosters and children's artwork from her students. Linda had been married to Tom for 25 years, and they were still happy together. Sometimes I had been jealous of how easy their relationship seemed. What did you put in that envelope that scared him so much? Linda asked curiously. I explained everything. The divorce papers, the evidence of his cheating, and most importantly, the business partnership agreement that would cost him half of everything he owned. The partnership agreement. Linda laughed. I remember when he made Tom sign something similar for their roofing business years ago. Robert was so worried about protecting his money back then. She shook her head. The irony is perfect. My phone rang and I saw it was Marcus calling. I took a deep breath before answering. Mom, he said right away, his voice tired. I'm coming over to Uncle Tom's house. Honey, you should be with Sarah on your wedding night, I said gently. I'm already in the car, he interrupted. Dad is back at the country club telling everyone you've lost your mind. He's saying terrible things about you to anyone who will listen. Course he was. Robert always changed the story to make himself look like the victim when things went wrong. Let him talk, I said calmly. People will figure out the truth soon enough. 20 minutes later Marcus arrived, still wearing his wedding suit but with his tie loosened and his hair messy. He looked exhausted and hurt as he hugged me tight. Why didn't you tell me what was happening? He asked, his voice muffled against my shoulder. I didn't want to ruin your engagement and wedding planning, I explained. You and Sarah deserve to be happy and excited about your future together. He pulled back, wiping his eyes. Well, Dad took care of ruining it anyway. We moved to Tom and Linda's living room, where Marcus finally heard the whole story. I told him about finding the credit card bills, following his father to restaurants, and discovering the emails about Robert and Jessica's plans. I knew something was wrong with Dad, Marcus admitted. He's been acting weird for months. Always on his phone, never around for family dinners anymore. But I never thought he would do something like this. None of us want to believe bad things about people we love, Linda said kindly, patting Marcus's shoulder. My phone buzzed with a text message from my lawyer, David Chen. The emergency court order had been approved. All the business accounts and assets I had identified were now frozen until the divorce was finalized. Robert now had access only to his personal checking account, which had enough money for basic living expenses but not much else. I showed the message to Linda and Marcus. Good, Marcus said firmly. He deserves whatever happens to him. Even though I was proud of my son's loyalty, I didn't want him to be too harsh. He's still your father, I reminded him gently. Your relationship with him is separate from what's happening between us. Marcus shook his head. Maybe someday I'll forgive him, but right now I can't even think about talking to him. He hugged me at the wedding and told me how proud he was, all while planning to destroy our family a few hours later. The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Tom went to answer it and came back looking uncomfortable. It's Robert, he said quietly. And he brought Jessica with him. I prepared myself as Tom led them into the living room. Jessica looked embarrassed and kept staring at the floor. She was younger than me but not a silly girl. She was 43 years old and should have known better than to get involved with a married man. She had short auburn hair and usually dressed very professionally, but tonight she looked messy and upset. Robert, on the other hand, looked furious. His earlier panic had turned into anger, which was typical for him when things didn't go his way. Margaret, you need to stop this nonsense right now, he demanded. Unfreeze those accounts. We can talk about this like adults. Marcus stood up, placing himself between his father and me. Maybe you should have tried acting like an adult before you announced your plans to leave Mom at my wedding. Robert's eyes widened as if he was just noticing his son was there. Marcus, this doesn't concern you. Doesn't concern me. Marcus repeated, his voice getting louder. You ruined my wedding day, and it doesn't concern me? Jessica touched Robert's arm nervously. Robert, maybe we should go home and talk about this privately. He shook her hand away, annoyed. No, I'm not leaving until Margaret agrees to be reasonable about this situation. Tom crossed his arms and frowned at his brother. Margaret seems to be the only reasonable person here. You created this mess, Robert. Now you have to deal with the consequences. I stayed seated on the couch, watching this drama unfold around me. For 32 years, I had been the peacemaker in our family. I was always the one who smoothed over arguments and made everyone happy. That job was exhausting, and I was finally free from it. The accounts will stay frozen until the court hearing, I said in a calm voice. That's in 1 week. The judge will decide how to divide everything fairly. 1 week. Robert sputtered. What am I supposed to do for a whole week? You have your personal checking account, I reminded him. The one you've been putting money in for the past year. Jessica's head snapped toward Robert, and she stared at him with wide eyes. You have a secret account. How much money is in it? An interesting situation was developing. Clearly, Robert hadn't told Jessica everything about his financial planning either. Robert ignored her question and focused on me. This is mean, Margaret. You're not usually this vindictive. Maybe you never really knew who I was, I replied. Just like I obviously never knew who you really were. Marcus turned to Jessica, his voice cold. Did you know he was going to announce it like that at my wedding? Jessica had the good sense to look ashamed. I thought he was going to talk to your mother privately first. The public announcement today was not what we had discussed. Robert shot her a betrayed look, realizing she was making him look even worse. Cracks were already showing in their united front, which didn't surprise me at all. I think you both should leave now, Linda said firmly. You've upset Marcus and Margaret enough for one day. Marcus, Robert pleaded, his voice becoming desperate. You have to understand that sometimes relationships change. People grow apart. It's not anyone's fault. My son's face hardened in a way I had never seen before, and his voice was ice-cold when he spoke. What I understand is that you're a coward who couldn't even give Mom the respect of a private conversation. What I understand is that you were stealing from our family while I was working extra shifts at the campus bookstore to help pay for my wedding because you said money was tight. Robert went pale. That detail was something he had clearly forgotten about, and it made him look even worse. That's not how it happened, Robert tried to defend himself weakly. It's exactly how it happened, Marcus cut him off. Please leave, Dad. I can't stand to look at you right now. The silence that followed was uncomfortable for everyone. Finally, Robert turned toward the door, and Jessica followed behind him like a guilty dog. At the front door, he stopped and looked back at me one more time. This isn't over, Margaret. I'll fight you on every single thing. I met his angry stare with calm confidence. You're welcome to try, Robert. Good luck with that. After they left, Marcus collapsed on the couch next to me, looking drained and sad. I've never talked to Dad like that before in my life, he said quietly. Sometimes standing up for what's right is painful, I told him, rubbing his back like I used to when he was little. Linda brought us fresh cups of tea and sat down across from us. To new beginnings, she said, raising her cup. Indeed, I thought to myself. This ending was just the beginning of something much better. The preliminary court hearing took place the following Tuesday morning in a small, wood-paneled courtroom downtown. I arrived with my attorney, David, while Robert came with a lawyer he had hired at the last minute. His lawyer was a young man who specialized in real estate law, not family cases. Robert's poor choice showed how unprepared he was for this legal battle. The judge was a middle-aged man with gray hair and a serious expression. He had no patience for drama or excuses. He reviewed our business partnership agreement carefully, reading every section. "This document appears to be legally binding," he said, looking at Robert's lawyer over his reading glasses. "Do you challenge its validity?" Robert's lawyer cleared his throat nervously. "Your Honor, we believe the business agreement doesn't apply to marital issues. Section 15 clearly states that the partnership ends if either party breaks their commitments in any area that affects the business," the judge read out loud. "Personal betrayals that damage the business relationship are specifically mentioned." He shuffled through more papers, then looked up seriously. "I am ordering that the asset freeze continues until we have a full financial investigation. The family home will remain with Mrs. Thompson during these proceedings, as specified in the partnership agreement's breach of trust clause." Robert's face turned bright red with anger and embarrassment. "This is completely unfair," he said loudly enough for everyone in the courtroom to hear. The judge gave him a stern look that could have frozen water. "Mr. Thompson, I suggest you read the agreement you signed more carefully before making any more complaints. This court will meet again in 30 days for the final hearing." As we left the courthouse, Robert caught up to me in the parking lot. "Margaret, please. We need to talk about this calmly. 32 years of marriage has to count for something. Doesn't our history mean anything to you?" "It meant everything to me," I replied honestly. "Until you decided it meant nothing to you." I walked to my car, leaving him standing alone beside his truck, finally beginning to understand that his actions had serious consequences. Word spread quickly through our small town. Friends and neighbors called every day, some offering help and support, others just curious about the gossip. I kept my dignity and didn't share private details, simply telling people, "Robert and I are getting divorced. These things happen sometimes." Meanwhile, Robert's carefully built reputation was falling apart. His image as a successful businessman and good family man was ruined. People who had respected him for years now saw him differently. The financial freeze meant he couldn't keep the promises he had made to Jessica. The lake house they had planned to buy together was no longer possible. The expensive vacation to Hawaii they had booked had to be cancelled. 3 weeks after the court hearing, Linda called me with interesting news. "Have you heard what happened with Jessica?" she asked, sounding amused. "She moved out of Robert's apartment already." I wasn't completely surprised, but I was impressed by how quickly it happened. Apparently, she found out that Robert's construction business is in much worse shape than he told her. The big savings account he bragged about doesn't exist. Her sister told my friend Karen that Jessica said she didn't want to date a man with money problems. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. He always was good at making things sound better than they really were. While Robert's life was falling apart, I was building something new and exciting. The small inheritance my grandmother had left me, which I had kept separate from our joint accounts, gave me the freedom to start fresh. I rented a small office space in town and began the tutoring center I had dreamed about for years. My first students were 2 children whose parents were getting divorced and needed extra help with their schoolwork. Word spread quickly, and more families started bringing their children to me. I specialized in helping kids who were going through difficult times at home, divorce, moving to new schools, or just needing extra confidence with their studies. The work was immediately fulfilling in a way my library job had never been. Marcus, who had settled into married life with Sarah in their apartment across town, called me regularly. "I'm so proud of you, Mom," he told me after visiting my tutoring center. "You're helping these kids when they need it most." "I'm just doing what I wish someone had done for you when you were struggling in middle school," I replied, remembering those difficult years when Robert was too busy with work to notice Marcus needed extra help with math. Being needed for my knowledge and skills instead of my cooking and cleaning felt wonderful and empowering. The final divorce hearing was scheduled for what would have been our 33rd wedding anniversary. It seemed like the perfect way to close that chapter of my life and begin a new one. Robert arrived looking thin and tired. I learned later that his construction business was struggling badly without my financial management and planning skills. Jessica had moved to Atlanta to live with her sister, leaving Robert completely alone. Most of our mutual friends had distanced themselves from him after learning the full story of how he had betrayed our family. The judge upheld the business partnership agreement completely. Robert left the courtroom with his personal possessions, his failing business, and whatever money remained in his private account after paying his legal fees. I kept our house, my retirement savings, and 60% of our shared investments, exactly as the partnership agreement stated for cases of broken trust. The justice was perfect. The same document Robert had insisted on to protect himself had become the thing that defeated him. As we left the courtroom for the last time, Robert approached me quietly. "I made a terrible mistake, Margaret," he said sadly. "Is there any chance we could ever try again?" "No," I interrupted gently but firmly. "That door is permanently closed now." "I understand," he replied, and for the first time in months, I believed he was being honest. "I hope you find happiness, Margaret. You deserve it more than anyone." It was perhaps the most sincere thing he had said to me in years. 6 months later, my tutoring center, Thompson's Learning Haven, was thriving beyond my wildest dreams. I had moved to a larger space and hired 3 other retired teachers to help me. I specialized in helping children navigate difficult life changes, using my own experience to guide them through tough times. Marcus visited often, proud of what I had built from nothing. "You know what's funny?" he said during one visit. "If Dad had just been honest from the beginning, he would have kept half of everything." "Sometimes people can't see past their own selfish desires," I replied, thinking about how different things could have been. The woman who had once defined herself only as Robert's wife and Marcus's mother had discovered a completely new identity: teacher, mentor, business owner, and advocate for children. The envelope I had handed Robert at the wedding hadn't just been my escape plan. It had been the key to unlocking a door I never knew existed. Behind that door I found not just justice, but a chance to reinvent myself completely. In protecting my future, I had also reclaimed something far more valuable than money: my own sense of worth and purpose. Thanks for watching Grandma Stories.